Section 3.7, solve a quadratic equation by factoring. In this section, we're going to solve quadratic equations by factoring. The multiplication property of 0 states that the product of a number and 0 is 0. So if a is a real number, then a multiplied by 0 is equal to 0. So consider the equation a multiplied by b equals 0. If this is a true equation, then either a is equal to 0 or b is equal to 0. The principle of zero products, or the zero product property. If the product of two factors is 0, then at least one of the factors must be 0. If a multiplied by b is 0, then a is equal to 0 or b is equal to 0. An equation that can be written in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, a cannot equal 0, is a quadratic equation. A quadratic equation is in standard form when the polynomial is equal to 0 and its terms are in descending order. A quadratic equation can be solved by using the principle of zero products when the polynomial ax squared plus bx plus c is factorable. The example on the next slide illustrates the steps involved in solving a quadratic equation by factoring. These are the steps that we're going to use today to solve quadratic equations by factoring. First, we'll need to make sure that the equation is written in standard form. Then we will factor the polynomial. Once the polynomial is factored, we will set each factor equal to 0. Then we'll solve each equation for the variable, and then we can plug each solution in to make sure that our answers are correct. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the first problems. Okay, now notice in those steps that we just went over, step 1 says write the equation in standard form, and step 2 says factor the polynomial. Now notice these two polynomials were already factors, so we're really beginning, when we solve these, we're beginning at step 3. Now notice this first one, a, says the factor y minus 3 multiplied by the factor y minus 5 is equal to 0. Well, if y minus 3 multiplied by y minus 5 is equal to 0, then one of those factors must equal 0. In other words, if y minus 3 multiplied by y minus 5 is equal to 0, then either y minus 3 must be equal to 0 or y minus 5 must be equal to 0. So what we're just going to do is we're going to solve each of these equations for the variable. If y minus 3 is equal to 0, we can add 3 to both sides. So we can see that y can equal 3. Now notice if we plugged 3 into the equation up above, 3 minus 3 is 0. So of course 0 times, and if we plug 3 in here, 3 minus 5 is negative 2. So of course 0 times negative 2 is equal to 0. So 3 is one of our solutions, or if y minus 5 is equal to 0, we would add 5 to both sides. So y can also be equal to 5. So notice up above, if I plug 5 in for y, 5 minus 3 is 2. 5 minus 5 is 0. And 0 times 2 is indeed equal to 0. So the solutions to this equation are y can either be equal to 3 or 5. Those are the two solutions to the equation. Now b also has already been factored, so we begin at step 3. 2a multiplied by 3a minus 2 is equal to 0. So that means that either 2a is equal to 0 or 3a minus 2 is equal to 0. So if 2a is equal to 0, to solve for a, we will divide both sides by 2. 0 divided by 2 is 0. So that means that a is equal to 0. If 3a minus 2 is equal to 0, to solve for a, we will add 2 to both sides. So 3a is equal to 2, and then we will divide both sides by 3. So a will equal 2/3. So the two solutions to this equation are a is equal to 0 and 2/3. Those are the two solutions. All right, the next two examples, notice that, well, let's look at C. Notice it is already written in standard form. ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So we do not have to worry about rewriting it in standard form. However, it has not been factored, so we do need to factor this polynomial first. So something times something is going to equal 0. So think of FOIL. We know that x times x is x squared. We're looking at our L, factors of 8. 1 times 8 is 8. 2 times 4 is 8. So I will try 2 and 4. Check your inner and outer to make sure it adds up to 6x. 2 times x is 2x. X times 4 is 4x. Great, it adds up to 6x. My signs need to be the same. In this case, they're both going to be positive. So we know that x plus 2 multiplied by x plus 4 is equal to 0. So using the zero product property, that means that either x plus 2 is equal to 0 or x plus 4 is equal to 0. So if x plus 2 is equal to 0, to solve for x, I will subtract 2 from both sides. So that means x is equal to -2. Or if x plus 4 is equal to 0, I will subtract 4 from both sides. And that will mean x is equal to -4. So my solutions, x is equal to -2 or -4. Those are the two solutions. D, 3a squared plus 14a plus 8 equals 0 is also already written in standard form, but we do need to factor it. Factors of 3 are just 1 and 3. So we know 3a multiplied by 1a is 3a squared. My factors of 8, 1 and 8, or 2 and 4. I need to write them so that my inner and outer will add up to 14a. So I believe I will want to have my 2 here and my 4 here. Check your inner and outer. 2 times a is 2a. 3a times 4 is 12a. Both signs are the same. It needs to add up to positive 14a, so they're both positive. So 3a plus 2 multiplied by a plus 4 is equal to 0. So that means either 3a plus 2 is equal to 0 or a plus 4 is equal to 0. If 3a plus 2 is equal to 0, to solve for a, we will subtract 2 from both sides. So we will have 3a equals -2. I will divide both sides by 3. So a is equal to -2/3. If a plus 4 is equal to 0, I will subtract 4 from both sides. A may also equal -4. So our two solutions are a equals -2/3 and -4. (9x squared minus 1 equals 0). Now notice if it is in standard form, 0 will be by itself on one side of the equation. Okay? 9x squared minus 1, if you recall, that is a difference of squares. Hopefully you recognize that. So we need to factor that. So we're going to have 3x multiplied by 3x is 9x squared. 1 multiplied by 1 is 1. 1 will be plus and 1 will be minus. So 3x plus 1 multiplied by 3x minus 1 equals 0. So that means either 3x plus 1 equals 0 or 3x minus 1 equals 0. All right, let's solve each of these equations. I will subtract 1 from both sides here. So 3x equals -1. Divide both sides by 3. So x equals -1/3. On this other side, I would add 1 to both sides. 3x equals positive 1, and divide both sides by 3. So x can also equal positive 1/3. So my solutions are x equals negative 1/3 or 1/3. 2t squared plus 7t equals 4. This one is not in standard form, notice. So in order to put it in standard form, I need to get the 4 on the left-hand side of the equation. So in order to do that, I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides of the equation. So now I can write this as 2t squared plus 7t minus 4 equals 0. So I had to write that one in standard form first. Now I will factor it. Factors of 2, 1 and 2, so I have 2t times 1t. My factors of 4 to choose from are 1 and 4, or 2 and 2. Okay, and 2 and 2 aren't going to work, so it's going to have to be 1 and 4. So I believe my 4 will have to go here, my 1 will have to go here, my signs will need to be different. 1 times 1t is 1t. 2t times 4 is 8t. Needs to add up to positive 7t, which means my 8 is positive and my 1 is negative. So I have a negative 1 times t and a 2t times positive 4. So 2t minus 1 multiplied by t plus 4 is equal to 0. So that means either 2t minus 1 equals 0 or t plus 4 equals 0. So to solve for t here, I will add 1 to both sides. So 2t equals 1 and divide both sides by 2. So t equals 1/2. Here I will subtract 4 from both sides. So t also equals negative 4. And I'll just write my answer up here where I have a little room. T can equal 1/2 or negative 4. All right, a couple more. These two are a little trickier, okay? Because notice this is not in standard form. It looks like the left-hand side, y times y minus 7, has been factored. However, you're going to bring the minus 18 over there. So really, you're going to have to distribute this left-hand side and then refactor it again once you move the 18 over to the left-hand side. So let's just go ahead and do that. Y times y is y squared. Y times negative 7 is negative 7y. Now you need to move the 18 to the left-hand side in order to put the equation in standard form. So I'm going to minus 18 on both sides. So now I will have y squared minus 7y minus 18 equals 0. So on the left-hand side, I distributed the y, and then I subtracted 18 from both sides, and now my equation's in standard form. So now I'm going to factor the left-hand side. Y times y is y squared. My factors of 18, I had to choose from 1 and 18, 2 and 9, or 3 and 6. This is negative, so my signs are different. So 9 and 2. 9 times y is 9y. 2 times y is 2y. I'm not writing on that because I need my room. It needs to add up to negative 7y. So my 9 needs to be negative. My 2 needs to be positive. So y minus 9 times y plus 2 has to equal 0. So that means either y minus 9 is equal to 0 or y plus 2 is equal to 0. So here I'm going to add 9 to both sides to get my y alone. So y can equal 9. Or here I can minus 2 on both sides to get my y alone. So y also can equal negative 2. So y, my solutions are 9, negative 2. Once again on this side, or on h, we have z minus 5 multiplied by z plus 4 equals 52. And once again, this would be great if instead of having a 52 we had a 0. Then all we'd have to do is set those two factors equal to 0, but we don't. We have a 52. So what we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to knock my earphones off my ears. We're going to have to redistribute or FOIL these two factors. So let's go ahead and do that. We have z times z is z squared first. Outer z times 4 is 4z. Inner negative 5 times z is negative 5z. Last, negative 5 times 4 is negative 20 equals 52. Okay, so that means z squared minus 1z minus 20 equals 52. So all I did was FOIL, multiply those two binomials together and combine like terms. And now I need to put this in standard form. I'm going to move the negative 52 over, and I'll combine it with the negative 20. So I have z squared minus 1z minus 72 equals 0. So now I'm in good shape. I have it in standard form. I'm going to go ahead and factor the trinomial now. Z times z is z squared. I need factors of 72 that will add up to negative 1, and my signs need to be different. And 9 and 8 automatically jumps out at me. I hope it does you too. 9 times 8 is 72, rather than list them all. It needs to add up to negative 1, my inner and outer. So I know that that's going to mean my 9 needs to be negative and my 8 needs to be positive. So z minus 9 times z plus 8 has to equal 0. So that means either z minus 9 has to equal 0 or z plus 8 has to equal 0. So if I add 9 to both sides here, that means z can equal 9. Or if I subtract 8 from both sides here, z can also equal negative 8. So the solutions to this equation are 9, negative 8. All right, I hope that's enough to get you going on your homework and your quizzes.